As we all are aware of, the coronavirus disease of 2019, or more commonly known as COVID-19, has extremely affected the globe as we know it. Sadly, because of this, several companies had to close down, had to fire their own employees, which led to unemployment, joblessness, and even poverty. All modes of transportation had to be stopped, schools were forced to be closed, and all the world's economies plummeted down to the ground. The world went to a standstill. Unfortunately, the world had to shut down as COVID took over. Basically, going outside was entirely banned, all in an effort to decrease human contact in order to combat the rapid spread of the disease. Furthermore, each country has had its own response to the sudden pandemic, some more stricter than others. Even so, one COVID-19 response really stuck out: Duterte and the Philippines' military approach. An approach where the government bodies such as the military and the police force were the main body of authority to observe the proper peace and order in the country during trying times such as these. That is why, in this essay, we will explore how the Philippines was impacted by COVID-19 as it spread across the nation, as well as the positive and negative effects of this approach. All to answer the question, is President Rodrigo Duterte's military approach on COVID-19 effective or not?
On January 21, 2020, the first ever COVID case was reported in the Philippines and have been spreading to the whole country for almost 2 years. According to the World Health Organization, there has been a total of 2,826,410 cases, with 2,758,235 recoveries, 47,074 deaths, and 33,488,997 vaccinated people in the Philippines as of November 22, 2021. One of the world's longest and strictest lockdowns has been described as the Philippines' response to COVID-19. The wearing of masks and social isolations were tightly enforced, and entire provinces and cities were placed under lockdown. Mobility was prohibited. Punitive action was taken in response to violations. To guarantee that order was maintained and that all health regulations were followed, the government relied heavily on the police and the military. The Philippines' response to the COVID-19 outbreak has been described as securitized. This assessment is based on the review of the government's overall military and police-centric stance. Most of the officials leading the fight against the pandemic are former generals. The president has emphasized the importance of his troops and police in the nation's fight against the virus on numerous occasions. The Philippines is not alone in declaring war on COVID-19 and in taking harsh steps to stop the virus from spreading. Except for a few hotspot locations, lockdown restrictions in Metro Manila and the rest of the country were gradually eased by the end of May 2020. But because of the lowering of the standards of security against the pandemic, in August 2020, the Philippines surpassed 100,000 COVID-19 instances for the first time, which led to another lockdown, but the Philippines is still now on the road to recovery.
It is really hard for the people to move during the lockdown because of the suspension of public transportations, age restrictions, strict implementations of food distribution and health services. But to add the presence of a fully armed uniformed workforce, it can almost be described as a scary place outside your home, and you can't help but think if this was really for the best. When the public heard of President Duterte's words on one of his address, he told the police to shoot them dead, pertaining to the people who were to defy the regulations. This made the public frightful because, as we all know, a lot of people had to step outside to be able to survive not only for themselves but for their families as well. Additionally, in another public address, the president mentioned that if the people were to continuously defy his rules, he threatened to put the Philippines in a martial law-like lockdown, which again made the public terrified. From the blog of Yusenko and Pizarro, because of this type of enforcement, the police detained a total of 188,348 Filipinos who allegedly violated the rules. Because of these results, a lot of families were left to suffer on their everyday expenses. Even though the solution was very restrictive, it did not produce a praiseworthy public health outcome, because with a country that has 108 million people, only some were putting their effort to get themselves tested, whether or not they are symptomatic or asymptomatic. That is why, according to Santos, Doctors have endlessly complained and asked the government to listen to them. Because unless the country resorts to a medical and scientific approach to this health crisis, the lockdowns will surely go to waste. Our frontliners added that the government's response to this problem was chaotic and slow compared to other countries. Even though endless complaints were being fired up to the government, nothing changed. And the public believed that it was getting worse day by day.
There isn't much benefit to the legacy of the current president as to how he continued the modernization of the military by prioritizing it instead of paying attention to the needs of his fellow countrymen, especially in the time of economic instability and of right now a pandemic. Much to this benefit, however, it did some good, but it doesn't really explain as to why he looked the other way from his platforms and promises. Duterte's military approach guaranteed results one way or another, and in a tumultuous time where people's interests are scattered, this ensures that there are things done while battling other problems in another front. So what problems do I pertain to? Political rivals and various criticism gathering from the masses themselves. It does sound unfair, but if we take a look at it from a strategic standpoint, he has the upper hand nonetheless. Politics doesn't only concern with governing the country as previously thought of, but plays with the core principle as to what politics is, power. His approach with an iron fist under the guise of imminent threat is a power move that there will be a change according to his will one way or another, and in a country of democracy, this can easily be done. Even with overwhelming evidence, there hasn't been much action from those in the military themselves towards their commander-in-chief, unlike the times when they all withdrew their support because of overwhelming evidence against the previous presidents. This is because there has been a significant increase in budget spending towards the military, which was sorely needed. By significant, I mean really bigger than the previous. One might say that our country is barreling towards war due to the budget being allotted. Aside from budget increase and benefits, it is well known that those with significant positions in the branch are given positions where they can earn, which is shady in itself, but who dares to speak against someone who spoon feeds you?
Though it is true that COVID-19 has taken a toll on all of us, which has shaken the world and drove us into chaos. As a response to this said crisis, President Rodrigo Duterte has declared military lockdown in the whole country, turning every street, city, even municipalities into ghost towns in just one night. The public's view on this approach has led to more retaliation, and even before we or they have considered the overwhelming evidence, it is true that the present president's military approach is really extreme, utterly extreme. With that being said, anything being done under the pretense of safeguarding the country, it's a brilliant political maneuver. However, no one can stop him, and all his party goals for one country are being accomplished with little to no opposition, with owning to his method. Overall, it is effective in the sense that it kept the infectious rate low compared to other countries. However, it is ineffective also in the sense that death rates continued to rise and did affect the country in an economical basis.